I stood at the edge of what everyone called Miller's Folly, 40 acres of seemingly worthless Kansas farmland that my grandfather had left me. The will reading 3 months ago still echoed in my mind. To my grandson Jake, I leave the land that holds our family's true legacy. My cousins had laughed, actually laughed, when the lawyer read those words. Congratulations on your patch of dirt, Jake, my cousin Brad had sneered, adjusting his expensive suit. Hope you enjoy paying property taxes on that wasteland. The others nodded in agreement, their faces smug with satisfaction over inheriting Grandpa's stocks, bonds, and the main farmhouse. But standing here now, watching the morning sun paint the horizon gold, I felt something different. The land stretched before me, wild and untamed, covered in prairie grass that whispered secrets in the wind. Grandpa had always been different, eccentric they called him. He'd spent his last years walking these fields alone, talking to himself, carrying that old leather journal everywhere. I'd driven here from my cramped apartment in Wichita, my construction job barely covering rent, let alone the inheritance taxes I'd somehow have to pay. Everyone expected me to sell immediately, to take whatever pittance some developer might offer for this useless ground. But as I walked deeper into the field, my boots crunching on dried grass, I remembered Grandpa's weathered hands pointing toward this very spot years ago. This land remembers everything, Jake, he'd whispered. Someday you'll understand what that means. The wind picked up, carrying a scent I couldn't quite place, earthy, almost metallic. Something was different about this place, something the others couldn't see. 3 weeks of camping on the property had taught me its rhythms. I'd pitched my tent near the old oak tree where Grandpa used to sit, reading his journal by lamplight. The inheritance taxes loomed like a storm cloud, $15,000 I didn't have, due in 2 months. This morning felt different. The air hung heavy with an unusual stillness, and the usual chorus of insects had fallen silent. As I walked my daily perimeter, checking the fence line Grandpa had mysteriously reinforced years ago, I noticed something odd near the eastern corner. The ground looked wrong. What had been solid earth yesterday now showed subtle cracks, like a dried riverbed. But these weren't drought lines. Kansas had seen plenty of rain this season. These cracks formed an almost perfect circle, roughly 10 feet across, with the largest fissures pointing toward the center like spokes on a wheel. Kneeling down, I pressed my palm against the earth. It felt warm, unnaturally so, as if something beneath was generating heat. The metallic scent I'd noticed before was stronger here, almost overwhelming. When I pulled my hand away, my palm was stained with a dark residue that definitely wasn't soil. My heart began to race. I'd worked construction long enough to recognize the signs of ground instability, but this was something else entirely. The earth seemed to pulse beneath my touch, like a sleeping giant's heartbeat. I thought about Grandpa's journal, still locked in that old trunk back at the farmhouse. My cousins had dismissed it as crazy old man ramblings, but suddenly I needed to read every word. Whatever was happening here, Grandpa had known about it. The ground trembled slightly, and I stepped back, watching in fascination as the cracks widened just a fraction more. Breaking into the farmhouse felt like betraying family, but desperation makes thieves of honest men. My cousins had changed the locks, but I still remembered where Grandpa hid the spare key, inside the old milk can by the back porch. The house smelled of dust and memories. Grandpa's study remained exactly as he'd left it, and there, beneath his reading chair, sat the brass-bound trunk I'd been searching for. The lock was old but sturdy. It took 20 minutes with a crowbar to pry it open. The journal lay on top, wrapped in oiled leather. Beneath it were dozens of yellow documents, geological surveys, and what looked like correspondence with oil companies dating back to the 1950s. My hands shook as I opened the journal to the first entry. March 15th, 1952. The Texaco man came again today. Offered me $50,000 for mineral rights. Told him no, same as always. This land's secret isn't for them, it's for family. For Jake, when he's ready. I flipped through pages of meticulous observations, ground temperature readings, descriptions of seepage patterns, sketches of the crack formations I'd just discovered. Entry after entry revealed a man who'd spent decades studying something extraordinary happening beneath his land. June 3rd, 1987. The pressure's building again. Jake was here today, only 12 years old, but he felt it too. Saw him stop and listen when we walked over the eastern section. The boy has the gift. He'll know what to do when the time comes. My breath caught. I remembered that day, remembered feeling something calling to me from beneath the ground. Grandpa had just smiled and ruffled my hair, saying nothing. The final entry was dated just weeks before his death. It's almost time. The earth is ready to give up its treasure. Jake will understand what the others cannot see. Armed with Grandpa's journal and a borrowed metal detector from my construction buddy Mike, I returned to the eastern field at dawn. The crack formation had grown overnight, now nearly 15 feet across, with some fissures deep enough to swallow my entire hand. Following Grandpa's detailed maps, I located what he'd marked as Point Zero, the exact center of the formation. The metal detector went crazy here, screaming with readings that made no sense. According to the device, there was a massive metallic deposit just 20 feet below the surface, but Grandpa's notes suggested something different. Not metal, one entry read. Liquid gold, black gold, the earth's blood, waiting to rise. I'd brought a shovel, thinking I might need to dig, but as I stood over Point Zero, the ground began to tremble. Not an earthquake, something more focused, more intentional. The largest crack at my feet started to widen, and I could hear something moving far below. Then I smelled it. Crude oil, raw, unrefined petroleum rising from deep within the earth. My heart hammered against my ribs as I knelt and peered into the widening fissure. 20 feet down, I could see it, a dark, viscous liquid reflecting the morning sunlight like a black mirror. The smell was overwhelming now, that distinctive petroleum scent that meant only one thing: oil. Actual oil seeping up through natural pressure, just like Grandpa had predicted. I sat back on my heels, stunned. This wasn't just some small deposit. Based on the pressure I could feel building beneath the ground, this was something massive, something that could change everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Brad. "Hope you're enjoying your worthless dirt, cousin." I almost laughed out loud. If only he knew what was literally bubbling up beneath his feet. I needed proof. Real, undeniable evidence that wouldn't be dismissed as wishful thinking or desperation. The oil seepage was increasing by the hour, but I had to be smart about this. One wrong move, and my cousins could claim I was trespassing or, worse, trying to defraud them somehow. Using my construction contacts, I called in a favor from Danny Rodriguez, a geological surveyor who owed me for a bathroom renovation. I told him I suspected water table issues and needed a professional assessment. Danny arrived that afternoon with his equipment, grumbling about the drive from Topeka. "Jesus, Jake, what happened here?" he asked, staring at the crack formation. "This looks like some kind of geological event." "That's what I'm hoping you can tell me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Danny set up his ground-penetrating radar and seismic equipment. For 2 hours, he took readings, measurements, and samples. I watched his expression change from professional boredom to confusion, then to excitement. "Jake, you need to sit down for this," he said finally, pulling off his work gloves. "I've been doing this for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like it. You've got a massive hydrocarbon deposit directly beneath this field. I'm talking about a natural oil reservoir that's been building pressure for decades." He showed me the readouts on his tablet. "See these density readings? This isn't some small pocket. Based on the seismic data, you're looking at potentially millions of barrels. The pressure's been building until it found this weak point in the rock layer. My legs felt weak. Are you saying? I'm saying your grandfather was sitting on one of the largest untapped oil reserves in Kansas. And from the looks of these pressure readings, it's about to announce itself to the world. Danny's prediction came true at 3:17 a.m. I was sleeping in my tent when the ground beneath me began to shake like a freight train was passing underneath. I scrambled outside just as the earth split open with a sound like thunder. What happened next defied belief. A column of crude oil shot skyward from point zero, black and gleaming in the moonlight, reaching 30 feet into the air before gravity pulled it back down. The gusher continued for nearly 10 minutes, coating everything within a 50-foot radius in thick, valuable petroleum. I stood there in my underwear and boots, oil-soaked and laughing like a madman. The smell was overwhelming, the sound deafening, but it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Decades of pressure had finally found release, and my grandfather's worthless land was revealing its true nature. When the initial eruption subsided, oil continued to flow steadily from the main fissure, pooling in the natural depression that had formed. I estimated at least 1,000 gallons had already surfaced, with more coming up every minute. My hands shook as I called Danny. "It happened," I said when he answered. "The gusher. It's real." "Holy shit, Jake. I'll be there in 2 hours with my emergency crew. Don't let anyone else on that property, you understand? And for God's sake, keep any ignition sources away from the area." As dawn broke over the oil-soaked field, I sat on Grandpa's old oak tree, watching liquid wealth bubble up from the earth. In the distance, I could see headlights on the county road. Word was already spreading. By noon, this place would be crawling with oil companies, lawyers, and reporters. But right now, in this moment, it was just me and Grandpa's legacy, finally revealed in all its black, beautiful glory. By 10 a.m., my quiet farm had become a three-ring circus. News travels fast in rural Kansas, especially when it involves oil shooting out of the ground. Danny's crew had arrived at dawn to cap the well temporarily, but not before a dozen neighbors, 3 reporters, and a convoy of vehicles with out-of-state plates had descended on the property. I stood at the gate, still wearing yesterday's oil-stained clothes, trying to process the chaos. Representatives from 4 different oil companies had already approached me with preliminary offers. The numbers they threw around made my head spin. $2 million for mineral rights, $5 million for a partnership deal, $10 million for outright purchase of the entire property. "Mr. Miller," called a woman in an expensive suit, stepping out of a black SUV. "I'm Sarah Chen from Apex Petroleum. We'd like to discuss immediate development opportunities." Behind her, a man in cowboy boots and a Stetson was arguing with one of Danny's crew members about access rights. A news van from Wichita had set up near the road, and I could see the reporter practicing her stand-up with my oil-soaked field in the background. My phone hadn't stopped ringing. Lawyers, investors, even a documentary filmmaker from California. Everyone wanted a piece of what they were already calling the Miller Strike. But the most interesting call came from my cousin Brad. His voice had lost all its smugness from the will reading. "Jake, we need to talk. There might have been some misunderstanding about the inheritance." I almost laughed. "Misunderstanding? Look, we're family. We should work together on this, split everything equally like Grandpa would have wanted." I hung up on him. Grandpa had been very specific about who should inherit this land, and it wasn't the cousins who'd mocked his crazy old man ways for decades. The euphoria of discovery quickly gave way to the harsh reality of ownership disputes. Within 48 hours, my cousins had filed an injunction claiming the will was invalid due to undue influence and Grandpa's alleged mental incompetence. Their lawyer, a sharp-dressed shark from Kansas City, argued that no rational person would leave valuable mineral rights to just one heir. I sat in my court-appointed attorney's cramped office, watching him shuffle through papers with the enthusiasm of a man attending his own funeral. "Jake, I'll be honest with you," he said. "They've got resources we don't. This could drag on for years." "But the will is clear," I protested. "Grandpa left me the land and everything under it." "Clear to us, maybe. But they're arguing he wasn't of sound mind when he wrote it. They've got medical records showing he was treated for depression, witnesses who'll testify he talked to himself, the whole 9 yards. Outside, I could see the oil derrick that Apex Petroleum had erected overnight, despite the legal uncertainty. The well was producing nearly 500 barrels a day, worth roughly $40,000 at current prices. Every day this legal battle continued was money flowing away from me. That evening, I returned to Grandpa's study and found something I'd missed before, a sealed envelope marked "For Jake's Eyes Only." Inside was a letter dated just days before his death. "Jake, if you're reading this, the vultures are circling." I knew they would. That's why I prepared. Check the loose floorboard under my desk. The evidence you need is there. Trust no one but yourself. And remember, this land chose you, not them. My hands trembled as I pried up the indicated floorboard. Inside was a metal box containing geological surveys from 1951, correspondence with oil companies, and most importantly, a psychiatric evaluation from just 6 months before his death, declaring him mentally competent and of sound mind. The old man had been 3 steps ahead of everyone. Armed with Grandpa's hidden evidence, I fired my incompetent lawyer and hired Rebecca Martinez, a fierce property rights attorney from Oklahoma who specialized in oil inheritance cases. She took one look at the psychiatric evaluation and smiled like a shark scenting blood. "Your grandfather was brilliant," she said during our first meeting. "He knew exactly what your cousins would try to pull. This evaluation was conducted specifically to prevent competency challenges, and it's ironclad." The tide turned quickly after that. Rebecca filed a motion to dismiss the injunction, presenting the psychiatric evaluation along with testimony from Danny Rodriguez about the sophisticated geological knowledge required to predict the oil discovery. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, seemed unimpressed with my cousin's arguments. "Your Honor," Rebecca argued, "the plaintiff's claim that Mr. Miller Sr. was incompetent is contradicted by the evidence. This was a man who spent decades studying geological formations, corresponded with petroleum engineers, and accurately predicted a major oil discovery. That's not the behavior of someone lacking mental capacity." My cousin's lawyer tried to object, but the evidence was overwhelming. Grandpa's journals showed methodical scientific thinking. His correspondence with oil companies demonstrated clear business acumen. The psychiatric evaluation was the final nail in their legal coffin. But the real victory came when Rebecca played her ace card, a recorded phone conversation from 1987 where Brad had called Grandpa crazy as a loon for refusing to sell the mineral rights. The recording, which Grandpa had apparently kept for decades, showed my cousins had always known about the potential oil deposits but had dismissed them as worthless. "It appears," the judge said dryly, "that the only people who failed to recognize Mr. Miller Sr.'s competence were those who stood to benefit from that failure. The injunction was dissolved. The land was mine, free and clear." 6 months after the first gusher, the Miller oil field was producing 2,000 barrels per day from 12 active wells. The sight of those derricks against the Kansas sky still took my breath away every morning. What had once been dismissed as worthless farmland was now generating nearly $150,000 per day in revenue. I stood in the trailer that served as my temporary office, reviewing production reports with Tom Bradley, the field supervisor from Apex Petroleum. Our partnership deal was working perfectly. They provided the expertise and equipment. I provided the land and mineral rights, and we split the profit 60-40 in my favor. Jake, I've been in this business 30 years, Tom said, pointing to the geological survey spread across my desk. This formation is extraordinary. Conservative estimates put the total recoverable oil at 15 million barrels. You're looking at a lifetime income that'll set up your family for generations. The numbers still seemed surreal. At current oil prices, 15 million barrels represented roughly 1.2 billion in gross revenue. Even after production costs, taxes, and Apex's share, I was looking at generational wealth. My phone rang. It was my banker, calling about the trust fund I was establishing. I'd already paid off the inheritance taxes, bought a modest house in town, and set aside money for my daughter's college education. But most of the wealth would go into conservation efforts, protecting Kansas farmland from development. Grandpa would have approved. He'd always said the land was more important than the money it could generate. Through the trailer window, I watched a red-tailed hawk circle over the active wells. Wildlife had quickly adapted to the industrial presence, and we'd implemented strict environmental protocols to protect the surrounding ecosystem. This wasn't just about oil anymore. It was about honoring a legacy, proving that sometimes the things others dismiss as worthless hold the greatest value of all. The irony wasn't lost on me when Brad called asking for a job. 6 months of legal fees had drained his inheritance, and his investment firm was struggling. His voice carried none of the arrogance I remembered from the will reading. "Jake, I know I was a complete ass," he said during our meeting at the field office. "I'm not asking for charity, just a chance to prove I can contribute something here." I studied my cousin across the desk. He looked older, humbled by the experience of watching his worthless inheritance become a billion-dollar operation. Part of me wanted to turn him away, to let him experience the dismissal he'd shown me. But Grandpa's voice echoed in my memory. "Family is family, Jake, even when they're fools." "What makes you think you can contribute to an oil operation?" I asked. "I have an MBA in finance and 15 years of investment experience. You're going to need sophisticated financial management as this operation scales up. Tax optimization, revenue diversification, long-term planning. That's what I do." He was right, of course. The money was flowing faster than I could properly manage it, and I needed professional help. Rebecca had recommended several financial advisors, but the idea of keeping it in the family appealed to me. "Here's the deal," I said finally. "You work for me, not with me. You follow my vision for this operation, and you treat every worker on this field with respect. The first time you act like the entitled prick you used to be, you're gone." Brad nodded eagerly. "Understood. And Jake? Thank you. I know I don't deserve this chance." As he left to tour the facilities, I felt something shift inside me. The anger I'd carried since the will reading was finally dissolving. Grandpa had been right about more than just the oil. Family was worth fighting for, even when they disappointed you. 1 year after the discovery, I stood before the Kansas Environmental Protection Agency, presenting my proposal for the Miller Conservation Trust. The oil wealth had given me something more valuable than money: the power to protect the land that had protected our family's secret for so long. "The trust will purchase and preserve 10,000 acres of Kansas farmland," I explained to the panel of officials. "We'll use sustainable farming practices, maintain wildlife corridors, and demonstrate that energy production and environmental protection can coexist." The presentation included detailed plans for solar installations, wind farms, and carbon sequestration projects. The oil field itself had become a model for responsible extraction, with minimal surface disruption and comprehensive environmental monitoring. Dr. Sarah Williams, the state's chief environmental scientist, leaned forward with interest. "Mr. Miller, This is an unprecedented commitment from a private landowner. What's driving this initiative? I thought about Grandpa's journal, about his deep connection to the land that others saw only as a commodity. My grandfather understood something that took me 40 years to learn. The land doesn't belong to us. We belong to the land. This oil was a gift, but it comes with responsibility. The trust was approved unanimously. Within 6 months, we'd purchased our first 1,000 acres from farmers facing bankruptcy, converting it to sustainable agriculture and prairie restoration. The Miller name, once mocked for its association with worthless land, was becoming synonymous with environmental stewardship. Standing in the restored prairie at sunset, watching native grasses wave in the wind, I felt Grandpa's presence more strongly than ever. The oil had made me wealthy, but this, preserving the land for future generations, this made me worthy of his legacy. The black gold beneath our feet would eventually run dry, but the green gold above ground would endure forever. 5 years later, I stood in the same spot where I'd first noticed the mysterious cracks in the earth. The active oil field stretched behind me, a testament to Grandpa's vision and patience. But ahead lay something even more remarkable. 5,000 acres of restored prairie, home to buffalo, elk, and countless bird species. My daughter Emma, now 16, walked beside me carrying Grandpa's old journal. She'd been reading it for a school project about family history, and her questions had sparked memories I'd almost forgotten. "Dad, listen to this," she said, reading from a 1985 entry. "Jake has the gift. He feels the land's heartbeat the way I do. Someday when I'm gone, he'll understand that the real treasure isn't what's buried beneath the ground. It's what grows above it." I smiled, remembering how I'd initially focused only on the oil, missing the deeper message in Grandpa's words. The petroleum had provided the means, but the true legacy was the land itself, protected and preserved for future generations. The Miller Conservation Trust now managed 15,000 acres across 3 counties. The oil wells continued producing, but at a sustainable rate that prioritized long-term environmental health over short-term profits. We'd pioneered new extraction techniques that minimized surface impact and invested heavily in renewable energy research. "Will you leave this to me someday?" Emma asked, gesturing toward the vast expanse of protected prairie. "It's not mine to leave," I replied, echoing Grandpa's wisdom. "We're just caretakers. But yes, someday it'll be your responsibility to protect." As the sun set over the Kansas plains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I felt the profound satisfaction of a promise kept. The land that others had mocked as worthless had revealed its true value, not just in the oil beneath, but in the life it sustained above. Grandpa had been right all along. The real treasure was never about what we could take from the land, but what we could give back to it.